There it is. Okay, so then thank you for joining me on Skype. I mean, it gets really petty and pathetic on Facebook comments. I mean, I'm guilty of that too.
So
I'll
am I. And I apologize if I was a dick. Actually, I apologize for being a dick because I probably
yeah,
had a few moments where I was a little bit unhinged. So, I mean, that's what Facebook does to people, though. There's that ether like wall where you don't see who you're talking to, so you can never have an actual conversation with them. So, there's a
exactly.
lot diluted in there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to like. I wanted to apologize too because when you're in a page called Dank Magic Memes, like no real conversation between two adults can happen. So I was like, come on, let's have an actual conversation. Maybe people can learn something about the game, about anything, and I think that would be cooler and a little bit more, well, a little less petty and stuff. Okay, so thank you for joining me in. And so, well, the topic we're trying to discuss here is net decking. Well, and more generally is the endless war between net decking and homebrewing and everything in between. So please, you start. Tell me what's your take on net decking, on homebrewing. Why do you? Because I feel, if I'm correct, if I'm not, you can correct me.
Hmm.
I believe that your position is that net decking is not cool. Let's say the least, to say the least. So tell us, like, what's your position? What do you think?
So, in terms of net decking, I honestly have no problem with it because I have a lot of friends that play on the casual and on the tournament side where they actually go and, when it comes to winning money, I could see why people would try to net deck. I totally see that. But at any rate, my only opinion on the net decking in general was that uh, even as a first time player, I feel like when it comes to the whole Magic the Gathering experience, that just the idea of just copying and pasting someone else's deck list is just, I feel like it takes away from the experience of exploring all these cards and all these sets. So I actually have some numbers here. Um, and these are for the modern tier one decks and the data is recent as of August 2020. So it's very, very recent. And so, for example, the top 5 decks are Burn, Jund, Red Deck Wins, Dredge, and Humans. So pretty familiar deck lists for people who play the game for a while. And those decks together take up 17.51% of the meta, which is accounting for over 3,300, my apologies, and 40 decks, which is a lot. That's a lot to take up the top almost 0.25% of the entire meta. And when I look at how many cards are actually available, it's kind of staggering in that opinion, especially since I feel like net decking contributes to that percentage because people are afraid to look up what they could possibly do with their own combos, especially with all the cards available. So I don't think that net deckers are bad people. I don't think that they're not intelligent. I just feel like people escape a certain feeling out of the entire game that's Magic the Gathering with the hundreds of thousands of cards that are available when they just simply net deck. If you're trying to win a competition, then that's probably the best way to do it. It's the easiest way to do it. I do understand that there is a lot of skill involved because, for example, I just told you all the statistics of the vast percentage of the same decks. So there's going to be a ton of mirror matches. There's going to be a ton of matchups against decks that pair up well against other decks a little bit better than others, of course. So there is some skill involved. You're not just going to get a day one player, slap them with a red deck wins deck. And, I mean, they would have a pretty good idea how it works if they're given the simple mechanics with how red deck wins, just turn sideways, unless there are other threats to account for on the board, but that's something that people get with experience. So when it comes to sheer experience, I like to level the playing field and say that all these players are generally around the same level since I'm counting for tournament style statistics here. So the amount of cards available for modern tier 1, there's 66 sets starting at the most recent with Throne of Eldraine going all the way back to Mirrodin. So each particular block in terms of the sets that come out have roughly 250 to 300 cards, which means that there's a total of roughly 16,500 cards available to 19,800 cards available to be used during these decks. So when I look at that, I do expect some deck. Obviously, some cards are more OP than others. We see ban lists happening in standard all the time. Standard is actually where I call home for now, since my local game store doesn't prohibit in-store play. So I'm just doing the best with what I got. I'm doing pretty well. Mythic, I'm not in the top like 1,000 at all, but I have fun. I like doing my own brews. I get stomped sometimes, I win sometimes, but I still have fun doing it. But yeah, so going back to my previous point, there's a staggering amount of cards available for these formats, but there's almost a quarter of the meta at the top 5 position that are almost exactly the same and being used by the vast majority of players. So for that, I feel like net decking contributes to that and actually lowers the amount of diversity when it comes to that, just because people just look at what the top players do when they succeed with their decks that were actually probably considered jank before because no one knew about those combos or strategies. It was new to the format. They take off with it, although burn was like universal from the very start of Magic the Gathering.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I just feel like it hurts the diversity. I feel like net decking can be pretty lazy when it comes to experiencing the game of Magic as a Magic the Gathering fan, and it can hurt the experience of others too, because if they get stopped, if you have a new player that wants to get into Modern, tries his own brew, looks up the formats, looks up the sets, looks up different possible strategies that he or she can use, but then they keep getting they keep facing the same decks over and over again, it's going to cause them like, hey, okay, so I can either build around the meta or I can become the meta. And it doesn't matter what deck people use, there's always, although it can be very heavily sideboard intuitive, there are ways to work around this, the top 5 decks being almost 20% of the same amount, accounting for over 3,000 of like the same people using the decks. And I feel like net decking contributes to that a little bit. So that's just where I come from. I don't hate net deckers. I don't think that they're less intelligent. I just feel like the act of net decking is just a little bit lazy in terms of brewing. And I'm not saying that if you don't show up to your Modern event with a like weird Mardu, counters deck or whatever the case may be, just some weird jank deck that doesn't win at all, that you're considered more intelligent, more creative. But I just feel like net decking kind of hurts when it comes to people experiencing how many cards are actually out there and what other combos are actually available. And for every person that net decks, it's also taken away a possible new meta changing possibility that could be introduced to the formats that are just taken away because they want to copy someone else's deck. And that's just where I stand with that. I'm sorry if I talked your ear off. I just had all my numbers here, just had to get it all out there. So
no, it's all right. Actually, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to start with a little story, and actually I agree with a lot of the things you said, and I obviously disagree with some specific points, and I'm going to cover them in a second. So the little story is that I totally get where you're coming from and what you're saying, because when I started with the game, like on a more serious level, like competing at FNMs and tournaments, like one thing is to play, in your kitchen table with your friends. I used to have like this Legacy Dragon Reanimator, but I didn't even know it was Legacy or Reanimator. Like it was just some jank. I had some cards. I saw other cards that I liked. I threw them together, and the deck, it was fun, I guess. It was crap. Like let's call it like it is, no? So yeah, I started playing like just casually. I didn't know there were formats. I didn't know there were tournaments. I didn't know anything about the game. Like I was very young. And years later, when I started college, there was a local game store, like very close to where I studied, and I started like going to this store like every Friday, checking the cards. The owner of the store actually ended up being one of my best friends, and nowadays I helped him with the store, the like administration stuff and the social network, etc. So he was the one who explained to me that, well, no, Magic is like there's a competitive level. Like we have tournaments here and there are formats, and he explained to me what standard is, what modern is. he told me, yeah, like there's a pro tour, there are Grand Prix events, and I was like, wow, that sounds cool because I've always considered myself somewhat a competitive person. I mean, I played sports all my life. Nowadays, I'm a personal trainer, so I work with powerlifters, with bodybuilders, with like all kinds of people that they are also involved in competition, you know. So I've always been like that, and I was like, wow, that sounds cool. So yeah, I'm gonna build a deck, and I'll come to the tournament. I'm gonna crush some people with my deck, and that obviously didn't happen. And it's just like you said, you know, like I remember my first standard FNM. It was around Cans of Tarkir era. Some like I remember that like the best deck or one of the best decks was this Gideon Siege Rhino deck, and I was playing Mono Black or something. And I faced, I got matched up against that deck like 3 different times during 5 rounds. You know, I played the same against the same deck 3 times in a row, I think. And I was like, what is this? Like, why is everyone playing the same deck? And obviously they all crushed me. And when the event was over, this guy from the store, his name is Joe. He was like, hey, so how did you do? Like, what do you think? And I was like, hey, I have a question, you know, and like, why was everyone using the same deck? Like, I don't get it. And he was like, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, like, if you're really going to try to be competitive, and if you want to beat these guys eventually, you're probably going to have to look up for lists on the internet, and well, just like play one of those lists because those are the decks that work. And here is the moment of truth. Like, this is my confession. The first time I heard that, I was like, that's the most pathetic thing I've ever heard. Like, I swear. I thought it was the most pathetic thing I had ever heard. And I was like, really? Like, you copy something from the internet, and then you come here and destroy new players, old players, the same deck. What's like, I didn't understand what was the fun in that. Like, I'm being honest. That's what I thought at that moment. But then again, I started, like, I was like determined to brew my own decks, to compete, and eventually I got a little better, you know, from with experience, like getting to know different cards. And so I became friends with some of these people, and these were like the local game store of my friend has like some of the frequent players are some of the best players here in my country. Like, they have gone to pro tours, they constantly win like the national events in here. They are always at the mythic leaderboard, etc., etc. So they are some of the best players like in here. And I started hanging out with those players. Like, I was like, well, I want to be better. I gotta hang out with the best. No? I think it's kind of the same in almost anything in life. Like, if you want to be the best power lifter, you gotta go train with the best power lifters. You know, if you want to be the best bodybuilder, you gotta go train with the best bodybuilders. If you want to be the best musician, etc., etc. So I was like, this is cool. Like, the best players are in here, and I noticed that obviously all of them used net decks, and I was like, but like, what's the fun in that? Was one day, like, when we had a little bit more, when we were closer, when we were already friends, I asked, like, why do you guys copy lists from the internet? And one of them was like, well, it's just Magic the Gathering has like all of these different aspects, like all of these different layers. Like, some people like it because of the artwork, and that's true. Like, I fell in love with the game like years ago because of the artwork. Um, there's players who love the competition. There's players who love building their own decks. And one of them told me, for example, when I want to do something different, you know, when I'm like tired of grinding tournaments and competing and that kind of stuff, because it gets tiresome at times. There's something called Commander, you know, and there like that. This is like 6 years ago, something like that, even more, I think. So there wasn't a website like EDH Rec or the Commander, the what was it? Well, there were like all of these tools that we have nowadays where we can look up for cards and lists or whatever. And they were like, well, in Commander, you build whatever you want. And so you get creative. Like you can enjoy that part of the game in Commander, you know? But we understand that if we want to play at the highest level, like, I mean, yeah, sure, we could build something. It could probably be good, like for a couple of tournaments. Maybe we could do well at a national. I don't know, but it's really hard. Like, it's not the most efficient way, you know. And so, like, I started understanding like the difference. No, like there's a time and place for everything. Like, and that's why I love Magic the Gathering. Like, you can enjoy so many different things that it rarely gets boring. You know, like sometimes you can get full on the competitive side. Sometimes you can just chill with Commander and it's very casual and you build your own jank and whatever and you have fun. And sometimes you can read the lore or you can admire the artwork. So there's always something different. And that's why I love the game, because it's very deep. And so this takes me to the points that you were making. Like it stifles, like, how did you put it? Like, it stifles diversity, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I agree. Like, that's a fact. I'm not going to deny. Like, if you go to a standard tournament, especially nowadays, you're going to be facing like the same decks, like something mono red, something with Uro, a month ago something with Teferi. Like, it's always the same, you know.
Oh
So
yeah, I was so happy that Teferi got banned in Standard. I was so happy because it basically made it so that only one person can play Magic.
Yeah, kind of. A lot of people were happy. I see why they banned Teferi. Like, I was a Teferi player. I'm gonna admit it. But yeah, I was like, sure. Like, I knew it. Like, since the card got spoiled, I remember telling my friends, this card is going to be busted. Like,
Absolutely.
If he doesn't get banned like in 2 months, I'm going to be extremely shocked. And everyone was like, no, come on, man. Like, this is crap. It's only going to be good in the mirror matches. And I was like, okay, we'll see. Yeah, sure. And look what happened. No? So yeah, I was surprised that it took so long for Wizards of the Coast to ban Teferi. But the other point, so I agree with this. I agree that, yeah, I mean, at the highest competitive level, diversity is not really a thing. Like, it's always the same decks. Like, it's always something burn. It's always something mid-range that is very high value with cards like Uro, or for example, in the case of Modern, it used to be something like Jump or Ursa, like with the snow-covered lands and that stuff. Now Uro is dominating Modern too. So yeah, I mean, it's always kind of the same. Like, we could say that. However, another point that you made is that it stops people from trying new things, from discovering new cards. Like, you're right, the card pool nowadays is like gigantic, you know. Like, Modern started in 8th edition and Mirroring, I think, and now it's like, I don't know how many sets. I don't have the number, but yeah, it's a lot. So it's a lot of cards. But I don't agree that it's because of these net decks that there's no diversity. I mean, for example, in Standard, that's a pretty small pool of, well, small pool of cards. Like, it's just like the last 5 or 6 sets. And so pro players, but not really pro players, because a lot of pro players don't. Like, a lot of people think that they build their own decks, and that's not true. Like, most of the pro players, from what I understand, don't build their own deck. Like, they have some special teams that build the decks that become the net decks. So
I didn't know that. So like most pro players that they have like a brainstorming team that like
kind
builds
of, yeah,
their decks around the meta. Oh, I didn't know that. That's new to me.
yeah. So if you, well, you probably already know that many pros like work in teams. So sometimes they work together, or sometimes they just how do I say? Because I've seen them, like they have said it in their on their streams, on their YouTube channels. Like, "Well, I got this list from this guy and that guy that they are mentioning. He might not be even he's probably not even a pro player. So they get the list somewhere else, and they sometimes they tweak them a little bit, and they learn them, and that's what net decks are, eventually. So I was talking about standard because the point I'm trying to make is that the standard it's a lot smaller than something like modern or legacy, and so the format gets solved like really quickly. I love your parrot, by the way.
Yeah, by the way, like I just wanted to apologize. It's
Don't
kind
worry.
of distracting.
No, no, no. I love it. I love it. I love animals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of easy to solve standard. Like in a couple of months, you already have like a good idea of what's the best deck, what are the best cards. And so it's not that people don't try to make combos work, or they don't try different cards. Like they do, and I've seen it. Like I said, like I've played with some of the best players in my country, and they also have teams, and they also take this very seriously, even if they're not quite at the same level as some of the pros from the United States or whatever, or Japan, other places. But they do take it seriously. They do the research, they test a lot, and they do try to like, look, this card looks interesting. Let's try to, and suddenly they realize like, yeah, it's good, but it's not the best, that. So, and they do try all of these interactions. They try to come up with combos and interesting synergies, but at the end of the day, like it's what it is, like I said, at the highest level of competition, at least, you're going to solve the format like pretty easily. Like Magic the Gathering players, I think, are very smart. So yeah, I mean, they know what the best decks are, what the best cards are, like in a matter of months. Like, and now in the case of modern or legacy, which have like a substantially larger card pool. I mean, yeah, it's taken a lot of years, but the work has been similar. Like a lot of people have tried. Like, okay, there's these cards in modern. They look interesting. Let's try to make them work. And there's even videos about it, like especially the ones like what was the name? The Masters of Modern have mentioned a lot of cards that they've tried to make work in the past. There are other like YouTubers, streamers, even pro players that have said like, well, I have been trying to make this card work for years. So they have tried it. Like, it's not that they just grab a list and I'm gonna play this forever. No, like they have tried to solve the format, because modern is a lot harder to solve than standard, I guess. And after years and years of modern tournaments and modern pro tours and whatever, they have come to the conclusion that, yeah, I mean, there are some cards that are interesting. They have a chance. Like, they probably belong to tier 2, tier 3 decks, but they're just not good enough. Like, at the highest level, like we've tried, right? Like they've tried, other people have tried, a lot of people try it, and who knows? Like maybe tomorrow, with the new sets that are coming up, like we all know that nowadays there's like 4 new sets every year, so that's a lot. Who knows? Like maybe tomorrow a card that gets printed, it's going to break something that was considered jank and fun and not competitive. I think, well, for example, Death Shadow, like it was a card that everyone thought it was really interesting, but it didn't like get that level of being a tier 1 deck until later, And there are more examples like that. Like we could look it up or whatever, but yeah, it's not that people don't try. It's not that people don't. It's not that they're not looking for new combos, or they do. It's just that sometimes, like at that level, like I said, in that highest level of competition, like, man, this works, and we know this works. So yeah, maybe tomorrow this is going to work, but right now this is what wins. So we are trying to win. So that's my approach to these 2 points that you made.
I are we there? Are we good?
Yeah. Sorry, there it is. Something got cut a little bit, but yeah, continue. Don't worry.
So yeah, so going back to my personal experience when I'm playing standard, and I don't think Magic the Gathering Arena is a just a clear cut like you're good if you make it to this point, because there's other algorithms involved because it is a computer program. Um, but when people make bad decks, they can get weeded out fairly quickly just because of the vast majority. I don't have the statistics of what decks are using standard right now, but I can imagine it's something along the lines of red deck wins, mono green especially, and decks of that nature. Flash, of course. Sultai Ramp is a big one too. I see a lot of Sultai Ramp. Nisa's really starting to get on my nerves right now, but there's nothing really that I can do about it. So the deck that I decided to use was Esper Artifacts, revolving around Steel Overseer, Counterspell Protection, and stuff like that. So it is, I think, represented in the meta, but it's like not very high. It's maybe like a tier 2 or 3 deck. But with my sideboards that I have that I try to implement in the deck and everything, I managed to do very well and whatnot. So, but yeah, I mean, it all depends on how people build it. But regardless, if you face my jank, I don't really know if it would be a jank, but it's just what I built from scratch. I looked up different things. Okay, I want to run this many eliminates or this many mystical disputes based on how many times I see this deck, and then I just refine it as the game goes on. And I use Magic the Gathering Assistant a lot for that too as well. So it helps me refine my deck building a little bit. But yeah, so it is possible to win with jank. It's just not as likely, obviously, because of the meta. Certain decks just operate better, and that's how it's always going to be. But going back to my original point, way back beginning of the video, I just feel like the act of net decking, especially for newer players, I feel like it hurts newer players the most, because going back to modern tier 1, using those statistics, there's 66 sets available. The most recent being Throne of Eldraine, and the most latest, the most oldest rather, being Mirrodin, which encompasses roughly 16,500 cards to 19,800 cards based on the average of cards that come out with each set. I feel like, me personally, that a little bit more than 20%, I feel like a little bit less than 20% should be just the same 5 decks. Just because of that, just so the sheer number. And some decks do extremely well, some other people latch onto it. So because of that, it doesn't bother me at all that people tend to go, well, this deck has this winning percentage in this format. I'm going to jump on board and see how well that I can do with it. That's not, I have no issue with that. That's why the metas are made, and it's common sense why metas actually form. Some cards operate better in certain synergies. Some cards are just better and whatnot. So, but yeah, and that's just my opinion on net decking in general. Net deck, in my personal opinion, deck building should be a tedious, painstaking process where you do a bunch of research, where you play test a bunch of decks, and then after you're comfortable with your deck, to go to the competitive field. But if you are going to jump in the competitive field, just like you said, you're going to see the same decks over and over and over again. And it's just because it's what people know works. And I totally get that. I can't be mad at people for using decks that work. It just, especially at the competitive level, it seems kind of stupid, honestly. Like, why would I get mad at someone for using a deck if it works? Just what I focused on from the very beginning was just that the act of net decking, I feel like, just lacks a little bit of substance, is all. So I understand why people do it. I understand why it happens. It's just, when it comes to experiencing Magic the Gathering, I feel like net decking can take away from that a little bit, based on what
yeah, I mean, and like I said, I agree that at that level, sometimes diversity is really not there. But it also depends, because I remember, I think it was about 2 years ago, there was this huge modern tournament here in my city, and it was amazing, because I remember that there were like I don't know, 60 participants, maybe a little bit more. I don't remember the actual number, but there were only two decks that were used twice among those participants. So you have almost 60 different decks like in Modern. And the winner of that tournament, he's actually he's not a friend, but he's an acquaintance. I like the guy. He used his own homebrew, and it was amazing. Like I got to the top 8 using Grixis Death Shadow. He beat me actually with his homebrew, and I wasn't angry. I was like, wow, this is cool, because I love Modern. I used to love it like a lot more than I do now, because now it's kind of I don't know. But I was like, wow, this is very cool. And there were a couple of other decks at the top 8 that were homebrews, you know? And so it that depends like on the current meta. For example, you mentioned that right now Burn and John are dominating. That's sometimes that's not even the case. Like I remember Burn was unplayable for months, like last year. Sometimes it's unplayable like the whole year. Jump too, like when there's a lot of unfair like decks like Tron and that kind of thing, like or Scape Shift. Jump is just not equipped, you know, to beat those decks, so it kind of fades away from the meta game. So yeah, I mean, even in Modern, it depends. Like sometimes it gets really stale and there's a lack of diversity. But sometimes you go to a big Modern tournament, and there's like very little repetition among the decks, no? And that's awesome. So yeah, I agree. Sometimes it feels like, yeah, I really don't want to play Modern right now because it's just Uro decks and jump. Like, I don't want to play that, and it's okay. It's like no one is forcing us to play jump or Uro or Modern in general if the meta game is not really appealing in that moment. For example, right now I really don't like the meta game from MTG Arena. Like a lot of people are going to say that guy is crazy, no? But I actually like the one with Teferi and Wilderness Reclamation better. But it's just my personal like taste, no, and my personal opinion. Like anyone is like entitled to their own preferences and everything. So if people are enjoying the meta game from right now, even better. Like it's perfect. I personally don't. So I have not been playing Magic Arena like as often as I used to when I was using Teferi and whatever. And it's okay. Like maybe I just need to take a break, and then when Zendikar Rising comes, maybe the meta game is going to shift again, and maybe I'm going to find it like attractive again, and I'll play like as I used to play a month ago. But so that's why I said I agree with that. Like sometimes formats and the meta game of those formats can feel like incredibly repetitive. I do. I get it. I have experienced it. So I agree. That's a fact. But it depends. Like and my counterpoint to that argument would be like, well, you can take a break. You can play Commander. You can play Pauper. You could make your own like modern tournaments. Like I used to do that with my friends when we felt like the meta game wasn't really attractive. We would be like, you know what? We're not going to play the tournament from this Saturday or from this Friday or whatever. Let's join. Like I had like 7 or 8 or 9 friends who played modern, and I was like, hey, everyone, come to my house, and we'll do a modern tournament, but we'll set up some rules like it has to be budget decks, or it has to be only homebrews, or we can only use these colors, or we're going to like have I don't know, everyone is going to throw a ball, and that determines what deck you're going to play. I don't know, like we try to spice things up, and we would enjoy playing modern that way. Like, and again, it's like because no one is forcing us to go play a modern tournament where we know that the meta game isn't going to be attractive for us, like, like, so we would be like, you know what, we're going to skip modern for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. We're going to wait for the new set to come out, and in the meantime, we can still play modern. We'll just do it on our own way. We'll create our own modern tournament with our own rules, or we'll play Commander, or we'll play Legacy. I don't know. So I think that's my problem with people that hate net deckers with such a passion. Is like, why? Like, no one is forcing you to play at that level,
I do
And
agree in that sense, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I know we
worry.
had a lot of online debates as well.
Yeah,
We were always there, just we were kind of going at each other's throats a little bit. And
that's
once
the
again,
internet.
even though I already apologized, I also want to say, I apologize.
I
The
apologize.
internet is gives a lot of people that mental free reign and that slack on like the leash to say things that they normally wouldn't say in person, and whatnot. So I do apologize for that. And
Me too.
but yeah, I never had any animosity towards net deckers because then I would hate standard at that point. But standard is so easy to play in arena right now, even if the algorithm is weird, even if I see a ton of the decks that are the same. And it's funny that you mentioned Wilderness Wreck, because there's nothing more satisfying than hitting someone for 40 damage at like instant speed, like at your end step. So that is pretty fun. I had a deck list of my own like that, and it was pretty fun to use. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, and please go on. Yeah, I just wanted to let you know.
No, and for example, I mean, it turns out that we were just being complete dickheads on the internet, like people are used to, but there's a lot of players out there, and I've seen it. Like, I have encountered more players who really really hate net deckers. Like really, they do like insults, like private messages, like I'm gonna kill you, I'm gonna find where you play, like that kind
That's
of.
unhealthy. That's a whole
I
new
know.
level of crazy.
I know, and like I said, maybe this is just my personal experience, but from what I've experienced, it's usually the guys that hate net deckers. Like, I have never come across someone who is like a grinder or whatever, and he only plays net, or she only plays net decks, and she's like, I'm superior, I'm a better player because I net. No, like, they were like, well, I want to win, like. I was mentioning, I don't know if it was with you or with someone else. Anyway, I also mentioned this in a previous video that I made for my channel, that one of my best friends, he's a neurosurgeon, and he's like a good one, So he has
I
very
hope so.
little. He's a good one. So he has very little spare time, and I remember that he told us, like, well, when I'm at the hospital and they ask everyone, like, okay, sometimes it's not going to be possible, but if it were possible, like, what day would you like to be, like, well, what day would you like to be your free day? And he would always be like, Friday, because he wanted to play Magic. So, and obviously it was not possible most of the time, but any time that he was able to, like, there were no surgeries or anything like important, and they were like, okay, go take your break. It's your free day. Huh? We'll see you tomorrow morning. He will come to our local game store and play Modern. Modern was his favorite format too, and I totally get if someone like that needs to net deck, because like I wouldn't enjoy Magic if every time I get the chance to play it and I have very little spare time, I go and everyone destroys me because I want to play my own homebrew and everyone is playing Tron and John and whatever. So I have no chance, and I don't have many opportunities to play Magic, no, and that's what I thought. Like, man, I mean, yeah, I totally get it. My friend, he's a doctor. He's busy all the time. Why would he waste his very few free moments of the week or of the day trying to build some weird deck, and he's going to probably get crushed? Like, there's no point in doing that, So that's what I was trying to explain to a lot of people, like because I have, like you said, debated other players on the internet like about net decking, homebrewing, whatever, like what, and they had some of these arguments like, now net deckers are stupid, they're not smart, they're not creative. Like if you're going to play a hobby and you don't have time to be creative, then what's the like? No, come on, man, that's not
Well,
how
that's what
the
makes
world.
a hobby is you're doing it at your own leisure. Plus, the
Exactly.
thing with your friend, and good for him, by the way, for being a neurosurgeon. He probably has the means to jump right into whatever deck he wants in whatever format because he has the means to do it. Like, oh, this deck list is $1,200.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
whatever.
think I'll swing that, whatever. And then, he jumps right into it. So I think it all depends on the particular situation of each player who goes in. But to say that net deckers are not intelligent, that's bashing a massive majority of the. Well, I don't know if there's a majority. There's no statistics really saying that, but there's a big chunk that net deck for their own reasons. And I never. And I know I said I should have clarified because I did say that like on the internet that I may have not really formulated the sentence as intellectually as I wanted to when it comes to hindsight, but it's just the act of net decking when it comes to getting the experience isn't as creative as posting a deck list online. And that was my only point. I wasn't trying to insult the intelligence of net deckers because, I mean, although they have to pilot the deck, they have to do everything that they have to do to get to the top eight and everything like that. So to insult an entire chunk of people because you're mad about getting crushed by red deck wins on the standard ladder like 18 times just seems like, I don't know, it just seems kind of a reach to me. But yeah, no, I don't think it's good to have any animosity towards any of that. At that point, if you're starting to dislike people for how they play the game when it's within the game's rules to play it that way, at that point, if it bothers you that much, you should get a new hobby.
Yeah,
Honestly,
I
like
agree.
why hate people for playing a certain game because they're playing it the way that they want? Certain people have different preferences for how people should approach it. Well, not how people should approach it, because like I said before, every situation is different. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm doing fairly well, but I'm not a neurosurgeon. You know.
Exactly.
So, but
Yeah,
yeah, I
me
mean,
too.
yeah.
Like I said, like I'm a personal trainer. I probably don't earn as much as my friend, and he's kind of cheap because I always buy cards for him, and he has never bought me any cards. So I'm gonna be like, dude, you're the doctor. Get me
You need to
a
get on him about that.
yeah. I'm gonna tell you,
Share the
dude.
wealth, buddy. Come on.
So, but I was going to say that I mean, you could be right about that. Like maybe there's some like no. I mean, I'm sure about that because, like I said, I also prefer home brewing. Like I started as a I hate net deckers member of the squad too. So to this day, even though now I am far more open to the idea of copying lists from the internet or looking at lists on the internet. Maybe not copying them, but like doing some research. Maybe if I have net decked in the past or whatever, to this day I still prefer like brewing my own decks. If it's in standard, in modern, in popper, whatever. And but I don't get so like what I get is yeah it's I guess more creative we could say that maybe, but I don't get the hate because I'm gonna give you like another argument that I could make. Okay, let's say that you homebrew something that is very linear. No, it's very similar to an aggro deck. It's your own, like it's your homebrew. You're using cards that like almost no one uses, but it's an aggro deck. So the game plan is very simple. No, like you take your cards and you're trying to transform them into damage. You use your
Drop and swing.
resources and you're trying to turn them into damage, and you're trying to be as fast as possible, and you're trying to sacrifice, well, you're not trying to, but you sacrifice that long-term mid-range game plan or whatever, or card advantage. You're sacrificing that to in favor of finishing your opponent quickly, and that's fine. That's like one of the many ways in which you can approach Magic the Gathering. It's perfectly fine. So you build your homebrew, and it's an aggro deck. It's your own aggro deck, and it works. But then I could say, okay, so yeah, it was creative when you build it because you're using cards that almost no one uses. But then again, when you're playing it, it's very linear. Like there's not going to be a lot of, a lot of
Interaction.
different, no, a lot of different play patterns. Like it's always going to feel very similar. Yeah, it's going to have some nuances here and there, but very little. And okay, this guy, he decided he wants to play the most complex deck he saw on the internet. And he has gotten so good at playing that deck that he has discovered play patterns that no one else has discovered before. And he even he even changed the list a little bit to make those play patterns even more powerful. And I think that's also creative. That's also creativity. Like finding I have never seen anyone uh, doing these things with this deck. Even if it's a popular deck, like everyone has been using it for years. We all know what deck it is. It has some of the best cards, whatever. But this guy, like he learned it so well that he has come up with new play patterns, new stuff. Like maybe he changed a couple of cards here and there, and now the deck it's even better. Like it's capable of even more things. And so that I think that also requires creativity. So I could make the argument like, okay, so you use your creativity to build a deck, that's fine. But maybe the deck doesn't require that much creativity, like when you're playing, it's just the same play patterns over and over again. And you could also copy a list from the internet and you could really become very capable using that list. And suddenly you are so good, you understand the deck so well that you start discovering new things that you can do, and you start getting creative with those cards that everyone's been using for years. And I think that's pretty awesome too. I don't know if you agree.
No, I do. It's whatever every individual makes out of the experience of playing Magic the Gathering. So,
Yep.
And creativity, I don't think can be defined as only doing things a certain way in Magic. There's just, I feel like personally that different approaches just that warrant more thought when it comes to the personal idea of deck building actually involve a little bit more creativity than the act of net decking. But there's a lot of people that can implement their creativity through their net decks if they decide to do so, because they probably figured out a combo they didn't previously actually was known in whatever deck that they decided to copy. And they did that utilizing their own creativity, because everyone does have creativity. Everyone does to a certain extent, especially if you're playing a card game like Magic the Gathering. You have some sort of creativity. You're involved in either the lore, the art, just like how you said before, the art is very fascinating. And there's different things that bring people in. I do have to tell you right now, though, I only have a couple minutes left. The girl gets home from work pretty soon, and she's going to be very agitated if I'm talking about Magic the Gathering online. So
No,
she's going to get pretty agitated. So
think
a couple minutes left, if that's okay.
I think we've already covered a lot of important aspects of this endless argument about homebrewing, net decking, and I think I don't know if you agree, it was a pleasant surprise that after we were such assholes on that meme page, we were able to have like a friendly conversation about these things. And like I said, like the point of a debate isn't I'm gonna beat you. No,
Absolutely.
That's trash talk. Like debates are for the listener, so that maybe they can learn something, and maybe they can, get their own opinions and ways of thinking challenged, and maybe they can be like, you know what, these guys are onto something. Maybe I've been too harsh towards net deckers, or the other way around. No? Like maybe net deckers are going to see this and like, you know what, it's true. Like I could try to improve myself also by like trying to come up with my own decks if I ever have the time or whatever. So yeah, I mean, this conversation, it was not for us. It was not to continue being absolute a-holes in here too. It was for other people that maybe they can learn to be a little bit more, I don't know,
Open-minded.
Open-minded, yeah. I mean, and they'll understand that Magic the Gathering, like I said, like it's such a deep game. It has so much to offer, and so people are going to approach the game in a different way from you, like most of the time. and it's perfectly fine. No? If you approach the game in this way and that person approaches the game in that way, it's not that you are correct. It's not that you are wrong. No, it's just you like different things and everything. It's cool, and we should be more accepting of that kind of thing. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. We're all part of the same community. We really are. So whether or not people like or dislike people based on their play styles, based on what decks that they decide to play, how they play their decks, whatever the case may be, it all comes down to us playing the same game. Let's just enjoy it. If I play my jank artifact deck on standard and I get creamed like 17, 18 times in a row, like honestly, like it's just a game. Like honestly, I think some people get too carried away, some people get too frustrated and whatnot, and it's just I don't think it's needed because we're all one community. We should be coming together and whatnot. Criticizing someone else's method of play or how they approach the game, it can be kind of childish, and I do honestly really like the conversation that we had for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think it was very, very. Sorry, this bird really wants attention right now.
I love it. Is it a boy or a girl?
Honestly, it hasn't been sexed yet. So with Sun Conyers, we have to take a blood test, and we haven't done that yet.
Oh.
And he's still I call him he just because I don't know. It's just what I can't call him it. So he is only like a year and a half right now, and whatnot. So after he gets a little bit older, then I'll see if it is actually he. But yeah, so unfortunately, I do have to go. But I do. It's like I said before. This is a very pleasant conversation. I didn't head into this expecting to win because it's like what you said about debates are about learning and growing and bouncing ideas and whatnot. So
thank you, Daniel, for this conversation, and thank you for letting me record it because I'm going to upload it to the channel. So maybe I don't know if one person learns something from this, I think it will be worth it. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dan. Have a nice Friday.
Thank you for having me, and hope that you have a good Friday too.
Excellent. See ya.
Have a good one.
You too.